I believe that there needs to be a face attached to the brand, right? And a lot of people like these creator founders, like my partner Jack. The Chef Cuso brand is up to 8 million followers across all channels. What Jack does as a founder creator really helps us acquire a ton of customers in the top of our funnel. Obviously, we have to have solid strategies at the back end to convert on these, but our content, I think that we do a really great job in the food creator space specifically of getting people in, getting people engaged. Our first run of seasonings, we produced a product that was very similar, I feel, to what's out on the market by some of our competitors. After that, we're like, we don't have the money to compete with some of these bigger companies. So how can we do it? And so we're like, let's make a premium product. Let's make a better product. Let's make a product that once people try it, they're like, this is vastly different than what's out there.
Welcome to the DTC Insider podcast, where online business owners come to find actionable tips and tactics to grow their businesses. Now, here's your host, Brian Roisentul.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the DTC Insider podcast. As always, I'm Brian Roisentul, your host, and I'm super excited today to have Cody Allen with me. He's the co-founder of Cuso Cuts, a brand that's redefining how we think about high-end kitchen essentials and seasonings. Cody teamed up with chef and content creator Jack in 2020, combining their experience in performance marketing and culinary innovation. Since launching, they have achieved exponential growth year over year, hitting national retailers, partnering with NFL players, and growing a massive following of, listen well, 8 million across platforms. From their origins in knives to their success in the seasoning market, Cody's team have found a way to make these products cool, accessible, and widely successful. Today, we'll dive into what's driven their profitability, their lessons in scaling, and what they see as the biggest opportunities for e-commerce brands in 2025. So let's jump in. Hey, Cody, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah. So why don't we start talking about Black Friday and Cyber Monday? Full disclosure for the audience, we are recording this in early December, so it's still very, very fresh. But if you have any stats or anything you can tell us about, please, why don't you start telling? Yeah.
You know what? Black Friday, it's interesting in most D2C companies, especially online. Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and especially like the tail end of Q4 is when you kind of make your number for the year.
Right.
We're a newer company, right? We technically started in 2019, but we really kicked things off like late 2021 as far as getting things going. So the numbers of growth are semi-arbitrary, right? Because we don't have we haven't necessarily plateaued regarding like what our revenue numbers are or should be. We continually introduce new product lines, which you'll see exponential growth potential in theory. We changed our business model a bit. So this year going into like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, we were slightly ahead of last year's numbers. In fact, by the time we hit Black Friday, we had actually hit last year's total revenue number. So It's an interesting concept, right? Because how did we get there? We introduced new sales channels. And I think that was a big attribution as to why we were there. So then going into Black Friday, everything was kind of extra, but it was also a necessity, right? Because we are scaling as a company. So I will say Black Friday, we did over 20% higher than we had done last year. We had our best day as a company, actually Black Friday, and then that whole weekend. It was our best 3-day stretch as a company. Which you look at it and you look at how we're acquiring traffic. We're doing a lot of paid advertising. We do a lot of organic as well too, but we sat down with our bookkeeper to make sure that we are shaking out profitably based on our marketing efforts and our other overhead. in our COGS, and the numbers are backing out year to date so far, which is what you want to see whenever you see a surplus in revenue come in. You kind of, as a founder or as a COO or CEO or CFO, whatever position you are, you kind of hold your breath for a minute because you're like, all right, well, how much money do we spend in ads, right?
Yeah.
And we weathered the storm, got through the weekend, and things are still going in the right direction. I mean, consumer behavior is still trending in purchase happy. There are a few different things here in America that are working against us, I would say. Number one, credit card debt is like at a
Yeah.
national high in the last decade, right? So you would assume that people would slow down spending. Obviously, people are the most fiscally responsible. So people are still going to buy, and it's still Christmas and still every other holiday, right? And then on top of that, we had an election here at the beginning of November or middle of November. I don't know when it was. That's bad American, right? And that caused a lot of uncertainty for a lot of Americans. So not only that, but we also saw that CPMs on like Meta and Google Ads kind of went up, right? So not only were we drawing in less revenue because we felt like people weren't converting at a higher rate, but it was costing us more to do so.
Yeah.
So our top of funnel strategy got pretty costly, but everything fleshed out in the end. Post election, we saw really strong numbers.
Yeah. So I wanted to say a few things because everything you're saying is very interesting so far. So I have a lot of questions I wanted to ask you. So the first one is, questions, comments, insights, many things like, first off, congrats because it sounds like it was a great Black Friday for you guys. And it totally, it goes in line with what, the Shopify president posted, after Black Friday and Cyber Monday. There was an overall increase of 24% year over year for Shopify merchants, and that's probably in line with what you said that you've grown. And with the brands we work with at BSR Digital, what we saw is something similar. We saw that overall it was 27%, but Black Friday was 55 or something like that. And then, of course, during the weekend, it slowed down at least for some of the brands. And then the Black on Cyber Monday was 25%, depending on the brand, right? So it looks like even though some brands, of course, started way earlier than last year, and I wanted to ask you about that in a minute, it's, still people during Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend, it was still a huge thing for, globally, because it's currently a global phenomenon, right? And in the US, of course, even more. So that's amazing. And one more thing I wanted to add on what you said in the beginning about starting in 2021. These last few years weren't easy at all. If you told me that you started right in the peak of the pandemic and, sales were coming through the door and as a water stream or something like that, well, that could have been different. But in this case, 2021, 2022, 2023, and of course, including 2024, were challenging years and still is currently still challenging for many, many brands. Profitability wasn't a word back then, wasn't a term many people used in the industry in 2021, right? Everyone cared about top line revenue, etc. And now, look at many brands, right? So, yeah, it's great that you've been growing steadily because it's something that many brands couldn't do in these last few years. So, on that, I wanted to ask you, what was your strategy last year? In let's say the year before in 2023 and last year in 2024. Did you implement the same strategy? What did you change and why?
So it's interesting that you say that. I truly believe that we don't have a brand without my partner, Jack. So we've seen brands shift from just being kind of faceless brands that do well. I mean, back in 2018, you could drop ship whatever you wanted without even like a fidget spinner, right? You didn't need anything. You make tens of millions of dollars. For sustainability in the D2C space now, I believe that there needs to be a face attached to the brand, right? And a lot of people like these creator founders, like my partner Jack, but people that do it well. We've all seen the creator founders that when everybody blew up on TikTok in 2020, people threw up a drop shipping store and they're like, buy my merch because they were popular, right? That kind of was like not a company, but what I call a revenue generating vehicle. So people got in, made some money, but they're not creating a company that could be around 10, 15, 20 years from now, even probably 3 or 4 years from when they started. So leveraging the social behemoth that Chef Cuso, the Chef Cuso brand, and my partner Jack is, I think is the variable that had the highest correlation to our success over the last 3 years. I'll start by saying that. After that, it was growing with our audience. So Jack's seen growth over the last few years, like we said. We're up, or the Chef Cuso brand is up to 8 million followers across all brands, all channels, sorry. And as we've continued to introduce new products, as we've continued to innovate the brand, we've really listened to what our consumers have said, right? So Jack and I got together and we're like, dude, wouldn't it be awesome to make knives, right? Just like two dudes throwing out, like we want to make a badass knife because that's like such a cool like kitchen flex to have a nice set of knives. So we do that. We do a V1 and the knife. I have it here somewhere in my house. Like it's not a good knife. It's not a great knife, right? But we weren't selling it for a crazy amount of money. And so we took feedback. We also continued to test products ourselves, and we're like, hey, we want to continue to iterate on what we've done. And so we've come out with like a couple iterations now, and we have now what we would consider a very beautiful Japanese chef knife that performs extremely well. Furthermore, we're like, all right, well, how can we get into this space? Like, we don't want to continue to compete in the knife space at the rate in which we need to burn up capital as far as innovating new knives. Like, it's expensive, right? And the turnover rate or the sell rate isn't great. At least it wasn't for us. So we're like, how can we get into the consumable space? And we always knew that we wanted to be in the consumable space. We always want to do seasonings. We met with somebody super early on. And the guy was like, you're not going to make any money unless you're selling like 10,000 units. And we're like, all right, well, 10,000 units. That was way more than we thought that knives than we had sold at the time, right? So we're like, oh man, like let's table it for now. And Jack's parents actually came to us and they're like, hey, like we want to partner with you guys and help you guys launch the seasoning portion of this business. So Cuso Cuts, which was originally like a knife brand, right, became Cuso's, which was a seasoning brand. And so when we talk about understanding our market and the growth we've had, it's been getting into the consumable space, listening to our audience, and then becoming one with our audience. Like one thing that Jack does great is collaborations with other creators, collaborations with professional teams and such, and just being engulfed in the community. So like you'll see Jack will be doing the Bills tailgate last weekend in the snow in Buffalo, and people will come up to him and they're like, I want to grill a Chef Cuso. So he's grilling for all of these people. People go and they're like, all right, cool, I want to go use this seasoning somewhere else. Jack went to the Alabama versus Tennessee game in Knoxville, Tennessee, and they got a bunch of college kids who are like, I want to grill with Chef Cuso, right? So making sure that we're doing on-site activations is very big, as far as what I believe has helped us keep our finger on the pulse, I guess you'd say, as far as what our community wants. Because I think that when brands start to grow, they really lose sight of what kind of got them there initially.
Right.
And then as far as like a differentiating factor, our first run of seasonings, we produced a product that was very similar, I feel, to what's out on the market by some of our competitors. After that, we're like, all right, well, we don't have the money to compete with some of these bigger companies. We don't have the following necessarily yet, or the name brand, the no name brand name. So how can we do it? And so we're like, let's make a premium product. Let's make a better product. Let's make a product that once people try it, they're like, this is vastly different than what's out there. And so we decided to go with all natural ingredients. We started to go with ingredients that we felt like were a little bit more expensive, but as people want to elevate their home cooking, that's where we come in. And you saw a lot of food creators get big in 2020 because a lot of people were cooking from home, right? So a lot of people were like, I have to learn how to cook. And so how can you elevate your same food that you've been cooking for the last year? And a lot of people got stuck making the same things because they don't have an expansive repertoire or recipe book, right? You can season it better. And so we have this campaign, like not a chef, because we're not chefs. Jack's play in Chef Cuso is funny, but we are home chefs. We are home cooks, and so there are way more home cooks than there are chefs out there, right? If you're trying to make a business that appeals to the chefs of the world, it's a fraction of a fraction, right? When you look at the pie chart. So we're like, all right, let's appeal to the masses. Let's appeal to people that care about how food tastes. Because there's always gonna be that consumer that they're like, I don't care. I'll spend $1 on salt, and that's all I need, whatever it is, right? But those people that are like, all right, I do want the rosemaries, the thymes, the activated charcoals, the garlic, and I do want something that's granulated or minced versus a powder. Those things make a difference in the way that your food tastes, the way that things come out, and we really feel like we can help people elevate their in-home culinary creations along with your barbecues, your grills, and such.
Yeah. So mainly you identified what people were struggling with or what they needed, the gap in the market, let's say. You created that, you gave it to them, and then you said, hey, here's the problem you have, here's the solution we have for you. Plus, you gave them an identity. It's like, you're not a chef, I'm not either, we are home cooks. It's like, this is a very important concept, like from the manual, let's say, that you have applied in practice, and it's not very common. Brands do. Only brands that are successful typically apply these kind of concepts, sometimes on purpose and sometimes without noticing. But the most important thing is that, first, we can all tell that you and Jack care. It's not only about being a face or faceless brand, it's about going outside and spreading the word about what you do, getting in touch with people, getting their feedback, interacting with them, creating something for them, and of course, giving them the identity they deserve according to to what you offer. So I do believe that all these ingredients and factors played in favor of your growth, of course, these years. So about that, I wanted to ask you, looking back, into 2024, if you had, I know it's tough because, and it's mainly me who says all the time that there's no one silver bullet that makes either a company succeed or fail, let's say. But if you had to choose one thing just for the exercise, what was the main factor, only one, that contributed to your growth in 2024?
Say that it had to have been our content. I think that what Jack does as a founder creator really helps us acquire a ton of customers in the top of our funnel. Obviously, we have to have solid strategies at the back end to convert on these. But our content, I think that we do a really great job in the food creator space specifically of getting people in, getting people engaged, and having people ask questions, right? Having people be like, how can I do that? Or ask themselves even internally, like, could I make that? How could I make that? And I think that we do a really strong job of acquiring a ton of people and a ton of impressions in the top of our funnel. I think that we could do a little bit better job of converting on said clients and people. That's something to look at, right? Because when you're talking about top funnel acquisition, why are these people there? I always talk to Jack about that when he's like, dude, we have so many impressions from Snapchat. Like, we should be converting way more. And I was like, the consumer on Snapchat isn't really in a buyer's mentality, you know?
Right.
But I think if I was to point at one thing that really pulls the weight the most, I would say that it's our content.
And that content, do you think that, or do you know whether, how much of that content is converting organically versus the ones, the content you repurpose and paid?
30 depends on the month. Anywhere from, we just went over these numbers yesterday, 22 to, on bad months, like 40% of our revenue is accompanied by our ad spend, meaning like our ROAS will be anywhere from like 5 to 2.5. So we make up the rest in organic, right? So on, let's say like $100,000 a month for round numbers, if we're spending $20,000 on like a 5x ROAS month, that's not all attributed to marketing. It's tough because we use software like Hyros and Chipper Whale to see direct attribution. If I were to tell you what direct attribution was, like it says Facebook is like horrible, right?
Right.
We don't use direct attribution because it's got to have a halo effect. We're seeing anywhere from 8 to 12 touch points before somebody purchases. The channels that we're currently on, we're on Meta, Google Ads, TikTok ads, Google Display, and those are like the main ones that we spend on. We have some SEO efforts in the back end as well too. But as far as strictly organic, there isn't necessarily a way to, with a brand that's gathering as many impressions as ours, we haven't found a way necessarily to attribute direct to organic sales. Because I don't trust all of the reporting in the back end of Shopify necessarily.
Yeah, no, on the back end of Shopify, it's tricky. Of course, it's post iOS 13 in 2021, everything changed for advertisers, right? So I guess the point is not to measure, to trying to understand attribution with 100% of accuracy is like trying to chase the sun. And I have said this multiple times, right? Because it doesn't exist. It all depends on the lenses we put on to understand it. So a quick example I always give is like, who recommended you to watch a certain TV show? And you can say, well, there were, I don't know, 4 friends, wife, or whoever or family members who told you about that show. Each of them told you to watch it with a different message and timing. Once, one over dinner, the other one while you were drinking something in a bar, the other one early in the morning, the other one at work while you were busy. And each of them highlighted different things. And maybe what triggered you into action was that TV show won an Oscar or won whatever prize, or that there was this actor or actress that you love, in the show. So we are triggered by different things, and it's not that the others weren't influential in the decision, but probably the last push was something different. So it's very complex. So how do you track things? Because I know it's not direct, but do you have like, I don't know, MER, or what other ways do you find to track things?
Currently, we use Triple Whale. We've used Hyros in the past as far as looking at attribution. What we really do, and we're breaking out our numbers right now for our call tomorrow, is we try to look at our top of funnel, we try to look at our average orders, and then we try to see, all right, how efficient is this? And we look at a specific date range. We're talking Black Friday right now mostly,
right?
And 2025 planning. We try to use a combination of things. We use our top of funnel impressions, we use our add to cart, we use our average order value, and then we use our customer, and to try to calculate our customer acquisition cost. And we do this per funnel. And so we say, like, all right, how costly is it for us to acquire a customer on each funnel? What does our ROAS need to be at, given our COGS, given any other miscellaneous costs that we might have? as a percentage of top line revenue to, let's say, like what our break even is. And right now we're trying to figure out what our ROAS needs to be at. And it is a diminishing return graph, because what does our ROAS need to be at $50,000 is different than what our ROAS, $50,000 in ad spend is different than
Right.
$200,000 in ad spend, right?
Right.
Because after we've accounted for our fixed costs, our variable costs are our variable costs, right? So these are numbers that we're still figuring out. And when I say this right now, it's interesting because if you don't have these numbers figured out, this is where companies grow too quickly, and this is where companies end up failing. You know, so when we talk about like we've had great growth year over year, I will say in 2025, this is a year that we're probably going to be pulling back on trying to reach for more top line revenue and growth. And we're going to take a deeper look at like saying like, all right, could we spend $100,000 less and make more money, be more profitable, right? So this is a year that we plan to grow, but we plan to grow at a more profitable rate. We are also in a particular vertical that is different than most. And what I say by that is when you look at our product offering, it is not one that someone would say it is what you would deem a complementary product, right? So people won't generally go to the grocery store because I got to buy this seasoning, right? They go to the grocery store to shop, and then they buy seasonings in addition to what they just purchased.
Right.
So you can think the same thing as like online purchasing. For Shopify and just for any direct to consumer, when we're selling directly off our website, think about the consumer behavior. They're buying a seasoning. They are buying it in a pack. So it's $50 to $100, right? They're paying for shipping. And now that becomes like a premium product that they had to, it's a bigger purchase versus and we can talk Amazon a bit too, versus this is a product that probably would do best in grocery stores. So it's not like the jewelry of the world, right? If you're talking about that, like in direct to consumer, like people will buy jewelry online like crazy. I know a lot of successful businesses like that, because people don't feel like they have to go into a jewelry store to see, touch, feel, right? They see enough on the ads and how it's displayed and the guarantees, and they learn about the metals, whatever it might be. Or clothing, right? I see a lot of great clothing stores that companies that do really well online direct to consumer. But I don't know how sustainable the seasoning space is online. I think there's always a place for it. But when I think of our company as a whole, we are trying to grow extremely popular and have our revenue come almost exclusively from direct consumer online. And as we become super popular, we plan on pivoting and having our direct to consumer sales go down and being made up by retail sales. You see this with companies like, and we always use Truff as an example if you're familiar with Truff. So Truff started in 2018, and they just became super popular online. I actually read like the founder's story. It was a couple guys, Nick and Nick, that started the page Sauce, and they actually started an Instagram page first before they ever started any sort of product.
Yeah.
So the page Sauce became super popular, and then they're like, all right, cool, let's start a product. They found their differentiating factor was to use truffle in their sauce, and so they had a super popular brand online. Shortly thereafter, they pushed into retail after they set their price point. And so that's very important to note. They have a different product category, in a sense that like people weren't doing truffle mayonnaise or truffle hot sauces at that scale in the past. They kind of created a new product category. So when they set the price point, right? It is an expensive mayo. You could buy much cheaper mayo. So when you look at our product in the same vein, you could buy cheaper seasoning, but like we use better ingredients. So what we want to do and kind of tie this all back into this, is we want to become wildly popular online so that we could eventually take a lot of market share in the retail space. We will set our price point based on our popularity, based on what people are willing to pay online. And now people get the convenience of being able to stop by a grocery store and buy said seasoning as well. We've seen a lot of our competitors do similar things, but I think that we are more popular as a D2C brand than a lot of our competitors. And we tested this by introducing Amazon last year. Amazon year over year has more than doubled in revenue. We move a lot of units on Amazon, and that is based on the convenience of this product offering, right? I'm an Amazon shopper. Don't shoot me down. Like, I like the convenience of Amazon. I live right next to an Amazon warehouse, so like I'll get same day on Cuso seasonings. And one thing that Amazon offers is convenience, right? And then this quote unquote free shipping. I mean, you pay for it some way, right? And your Prime membership or however it is. So if you have a product that is extremely big on convenience, Amazon is the most convenient online platform. And then from there, the more convenient would be retail. So retail is tricky because, and that's obviously not the focus of your podcast, but retail is tricky because you could say you're in X, Y, and Z store, but like, are you in the X, Y, and Z store for the person that's sitting on their couch and just saw your ad and they're like, all right, cool, I'm going to go to Costco, but now it's not in your Costco. So now the consumer's like, oh, damn, I don't want to go buy it online now. I thought I can get it at Costco. So there's a little bit of a back and forth that goes into it and a strategy that goes into it. But I think that for our product, long term, that's the place that we want to be.
Makes sense.
So when you talk that, and that gets even a little bit more messy when you talk about attribution, because there is no way of tracking that data. But we do understand there are paid advertising efforts that are geographically located in particular regions, depending on what stores you're in.
Yeah. So, by the way, we do discuss retail here, as part of the marketing mix, and it's, of course, as everything, it has its ups and downs, and many brands, big and small brands as well, that are into that, are in retail stores. They discuss, all of that, that what they thought initially that retail, would be, and the job and the extra efforts they then learned that is required, to be in a retail store. So we have recorded plenty of episodes with that, and it was.
I could get. We're nationally in the third largest grocer in Canada. I could explain. It's not necessarily the difficulties, but it's running a whole separate business. If you think about who Cuso is on Shopify, who Cuso's is on Amazon, like retail is a whole separate business. There's a whole set of business operations that come with it. Fees, payment structures. It's a different animal.
And also the story you can tell in each channel, probably when people and what people are looking to normally see in a channel, right? When you go to Costco or any other retail store, there's no marketing that you can do unless you have bigger pockets and you can do some sort of signs or play around with some things. But average brand probably gets a space in the shelf that costs a lot of money, right? And the product needs to do the marketing for you. And many times, as your products, it's a super small product that you cannot fit anything. So you need to stand out, and probably they will compare price. Or if they don't know about you, they won't understand why until they read it. So what's your biggest differentiator? And you have 1 second to shine and a small space. So I know it's complex, but in online, on the other hand, you have, set marketplaces like Amazon, Walmart these days, and many others. But let's say Amazon, you compete against many other products. It's probably a white background image with the product right there, with the reviews. Like, people look at certain things, while on the ads, organic content, your website, you can play much more with that storytelling, how you transform people experiences. Like, you turn the average person into a home cook or something like that, right? They can see, Jack and everything you guys do, and I don't know, the mission or ingredients, whatever you want to tell them. So that's
It's a,
probably,
yeah, it's a lot different, right? So
yeah,
good different. But again, us being younger founders, not younger by age necessarily, but newer in this D2C space, we're
right.
definitely learning this as we go, so it's fun, it's frustrating, it's all the things, it's all the things, right? It's intriguing.
Yeah. So the one thing I wanted to ask you is, we've been slightly talking about, Jack being an influencer and driving a lot of, engagement and of course customers. And you said in the beginning that probably his content is probably the number one factor or the main factor for the brand success. So we've been discussing at length from different point of views, and I would love yours because I think that you're more than qualified to talk about that based on your experience with that. Is founder-led content. Many founders are not willing to be in front of a camera. They don't want to. They say they're shy. They don't have time. Like many things that I have heard personally with clients or here on the podcast as well. And I'm talking about small brands as well as, 8, 9 figure brands. Why not? So
Right.
I wanted to ask, how do you know more or less how much time does Jack dedicate per week, to record content? How do you guys like briefly organize, or schedule that the content or plan the content? And what why do you think that every brand out there listening to this, if you think that of course should, you know, uh, commit to, recording content as a founder or as a team?
So for context, for people that know America or the map, I live in California. Jack lives in upstate New York. So we almost couldn't live further away operating a company. It's not easy. We live 3 different time zones away. But from an operational standpoint, content recording, having a team, we are a team of essentially freelancers that live all over the country and even some other countries as well. Um, it's not easy to get the content game done. We see companies do it better than us because they have not better as much as more efficiently, right? Because they have like a central hub and office where workspace
Right.
where they do it. Jack is, and so you guys are aware too. Also, the Chef Cuso brand is independent from Cuso Cuts. So the Chef Cuso brand, Jack is doing a giveaway with the NFL. Jack is doing Reynolds Wrap paid sponsored ads, right? He's doing Pepsi, whatever they are, right? So Jack has to record content for other companies as well too, because they know how powerful his brand is. I think he had like 1 billion impressions for Traeger last year or something along those lines.
Wow.
On post that had Traeger in it. So yeah, very powerful brand. With that said, Jack has to be very diligent, and Jack is diligent because of his wife, Katie. That is why he's structured, because of her. So they plan their filming 2 to 3 days a week, depending on kind of what he has outside of that. Like he has a couple days where it'll strictly just be for Cuso Cuts, and he's like, hey, I can film this recipe, these ads on these days, and we have a team. Like we said, we have a project manager, we have a social media manager, where she'll come in and she'll be like, hey Jack, like this is kind of what I need from you. And then we have an ads team and ads managers per channel, and they're like, hey Jack, like we all come together and say like, hey, let's talk Black Friday, right? And it's funny, you said like companies continue to start earlier and earlier. We started much earlier last year. We didn't want to do that whole like Black Friday starts in July thing this year. But so we had a Notion board that had all of our dates of our different sales that we're having in Q4 leading up to Black Friday. And so we come together as a company and we come with those, and then we come up with different creatives that are needed for each of them, whether that be Jack, whether it be other creatives, whether it be me as a creator. We say like, all right, can we do these, and what do they do by? And we try to be very structured, as structured as you can, right? And so structuring your content and planning out days well in advance is huge, right? Especially in the creative space or the ad space, where you don't know if one ad is going to hit, right? You need to have 3 different variations of the hooks. You need to have 3 different variations of the CTAs. You need to have 50 different variations of how it's cut up, right? So we try to get it all done. We have a collaborative board. We don't use Dropbox. We use Air. There's a free shout out for Air. And it's an awesome tool where we can go in and everything is there. And we even have like our ads team that just will go and splice things up as they see fit for TikTok. Because what we found this year as well, and I know I'm kind of getting on a tangent, is that each channel takes a very different type of ad with a very different type of CTA, with a very different type of hook, and very different type of offer too. So what we offer on Meta is not the same offering that you'll see on TikTok Shop or the ads place, right? So like you'll see like buy 2 get 2 free on TikTok Shop, but on Meta we have like our more traditional ads offering. So as far as people that want to leverage creators, be diligent with it, understand your offerings, or I apologize, your deliverables, what you're asking, and putting a face to a brand is not new, right? Like think of the George Foreman grills of the world, right? Like how much did George Foreman have to do with that frankly shitty grill, right? Like it was really just putting this popular face to an item, right? So there's a lot of power in it. There's definitely a lot of power in it.
Great. Yeah, I kept thinking about, I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I kept thinking about, what you said about the different offers for each channel and specifically for Meta and TikTok. So what's the pattern right there? Like a more, let's say a cheaper or more aggressive offer for TikTok than for Meta? Is that it?
Yeah, it has been that. We try to think about the consumers, and we are all consumers, right? Like I tell my team, I'm like, hey, like, what do you guys see out there? What would make you guys buy, right? We have some people that they're like, yeah, I don't buy off TikTok Shop. I won't do it. It's weird. We have some people that are like, yeah, I don't buy off Facebook, or I only shop on Amazon. So I'm like, all right, what would make you buy? As far as Meta goes, we do one big sale a year, and that is our Black Friday sale. Like we do buy one, get 50% off of a knife. A couple years ago when we first started off, we did buy one, get a free knife. Lost our ass. And then we discount our seasonings. The TikTok one, you think about the consumer on TikTok, a little bit of different age demographic that you see that excels. And it's, I won't say gimmicky, but it is very much so like Black Friday used to be. Black Friday used to be like, go to Best Buy or go to an electronics store and get a big screen TV for $15, right? So on TikTok, you see often something marked down 90%, but you got to get it now. You don't see that often on Facebook anymore. So TikTok, you see these massive discounts. So we give away a lot of free product, but we obviously ask people to buy product to get the free product. That's kind of the strategy that we've seen on TikTok. And I will be the first to say that like we haven't been wildly successful on TikTok Shop. We were one of the first people introduced to the beta platform of TikTok Shop. And it's interesting because TikTok Shop is the ads platform. Like you can run ads on there. TikTok Shop is your storefront. But then the organic side of TikTok Shop is where we haven't seen a ton of success with. And that's because like I've seen people go on these TikTok Shop lives and sell $1 million of product in a 24-hour live. People are doing lives. I personally have a buddy of mine that has a small clothing store based out of here in Northern California. And he started doing TikTok lives every single night. TikTok shop lives every single night, and he's selling well into the 6 figures per month now in his apparel business. He was selling 1 or 2 orders a week prior to that.
Yeah. The other
He's not spending any money on paid advertising. Everything is organic.
Yeah, the other day I heard somebody, I think it was Sean Riley, founder of Dude Wipes, saying that, TikTok shop today is like the early days of Amazon, right? Of course, it won't be probably in 2025 or in 2026, in the next 24 months, but today is the early days. And from what I heard from well-known brands with really good content, like really good to the level of having a TV show on Netflix, themselves. So they record quality content, and they said that, their content, even though it's really good quality, it doesn't perform on TikTok shop organically. It's the
Right.
influencers' content that performs organically in TikTok shop. So the question to you is, do you leverage other creators for TikTok shop, or is it Jack organically trying to push sales there?
So TikTok shop is interesting because it is influencer driven. It is creator driven. You cannot have this overly produced piece of content and come on a TikTok video, let alone TikTok live, and it just does not work. Having Jack do it is interesting because Jack and the Chef Cuso brand is, like I said in the very beginning of the call, we have a very strong connection with our audience. We don't want Jack to come off inauthentic and almost change his style of content
Right.
to what works well on TikTok shop. Like you see these people go on TikTok live and or go live on TikTok and they'll say like packing your orders, like next 5 people that buy something we're giving away whatever. Like that's not Jack, right? That's and so when I talked about how people and brands do things more efficiently than us, if we had like a centralized location where we could pack orders, if we had a centralized location where we had a couple creators where they could set up a live studio and just pack orders. I've seen some like people in our space. I'll give him a shout out. This guy, Elijah's Extreme. He makes hot sauce and he makes this hot honey, and they go on live constantly, and they have a warehouse, and they have their different employees come in, and they'll be like, next 5 people that buy get this and whatever. And so they do a really good job of that. That's just not what we have the capability to do as it stands today. Now in 2025, maybe we do get a centralized warehouse and location and do some things like that, because that's what TikTok live or TikTok shop and going live on TikTok begs for. You can't come to TikTok inauthentic. You will be not shadow banned, but you're not going to get the views that you want. And then when you do blow up, just hammer down and stick with what you do. We've seen a ton of creators have their lives changed on TikTok. It's absolutely wild.
It's crazy, as the pandemic changed many people's lives in different ways. I think that it's happening with TikTok shop these days. I see all kind of stuff, as you said. So I could keep going for hours because it's all very interesting, and I have a lot of questions that I couldn't ask you, but it was because it was very interesting already, and I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you for these extra minutes. Before you go, can I ask you, do you have any book that you love that you want to share with the audience? We put together a list of books mentioned here in the pod every single year, so I would love to hear if you have one.
Yeah, there's this book that I'm currently reading, and it's called Profit First. It's an interesting book. I actually have this here. Mike Michalowicz.
Oh yeah.
So it's just interesting because when the gentleman talks about how he's grown businesses have failed, got too much overhead, too much frivolous spending, and if you were to start a business over, to make sure that you're making profits. We live in the world now where people believe that you can just run at a deficit because you see the Ubers of the world doing it and the Netflixes of the world. Netflix has never made a profit. Doesn't matter. You need to understand your business, your industry, before you just start trying to run a company at a massive deficit, because eventually money runs out, debts come due, right?
Yeah.
And so reading that book has been very interesting because there's also one called like the Lean Startup. Being a small business owner and a founder, right?
Right here.
See, yeah, so you need to learn how to, for lack of a better term, do stuff yourself so that you aren't taking on a massive overhead. People, it's nice to say like, oh, I have this big team and I have this and I have that, and it's like, if you want to start up a business, this book kind of teaches you like, hey, keep your overhead low. And my advice would be to do as many things yourself as you can for as long as you can until it's costing you more money by not having someone else do it for you.
Yeah.
Think
100%.
of it, yeah. It's just it's a book that I would recommend to everybody starting any sort of business.
Yeah, I heard many, it was recommended a few years ago on the pod, and I know many successful brands, brand founders that read the book, and I haven't read it myself, but it's on my list. I know what it's about, and it's, yeah, many people said, I think it's the right book for you to read it currently based on the conversation that we had, looking into 2025 to make it a more profitable year. I think it's the right one. So thank you for bringing it up, Cody. It was great to have you here. A lot of golden nuggets that you mentioned, and before you go, please, why don't you tell the audience where they can go to learn more about you and the company?
Yeah, so I am pretty standard across all socials, and the website is just the Cody Allen, or thecodyallen.com. And our company is Cuso Cuts. That's CUSOCUTS, Kusokats.com. A lot of great sales right now through the end of the year. If you guys want to elevate your seasoning game.
Amazing. So as always, for you in the audience, if you're listening to this or watching this, why not? If you're not already there, make sure to go to the DTCinsider.com. And once you click on the episode, you will find the show notes, including the social handles for Cody, and of course, the link to his website, the company, and of course, the link to the book. Cody, it was a pleasure to have you here. Thank you again.
Thanks so much, man. I appreciate you.
This episode was brought to you by BSR Digital. We help DTC brands grow through paid ads and email marketing campaigns. If you'd like us to help your business grow, head on over to bsrdigital.com and schedule a call with us.